So welcome, Tim. Welcome to the MASB Winter Summit. For the audience to know, you are a very active member of our marketing metrics certification team. So in addition to your day life, you volunteer time to work and do these assessments. And as part of that, you've had a broad view of individuals, especially what they're using in advanced analytics. And you yourself have developed a technique that you would like to share with everyone.
Exactly, yeah. I guess the more jobs you have in this business, the more experience you acquire. So you're correct in your assessment.
Fantastic. All right. Well, I'll just hand it over to you. We are
All
sharing
right.
your slides now, and
Okay.
we will
All
go
right. Great.
forward.
So what we want to do today is talk about a recipe for the application of AI. We might just mention that the client that we did this project for is very concerned that they have the true drivers of behavioral choice. They're not concerned with spending anything really that doesn't develop a payback for them. They're also in a very competitive and very complex category, and that is a charity. So what we want to do today is give you the methodology that we developed and why we think it worked for us. And so it's a little bit of a recipe. We'll talk about the case and what we're up to and how we executed this thing and give you a little recipe. And then at the end, we'll talk about how we kind of tidied up what we did in terms of a conclusion and also what we expect to do next. So our purpose for the entire project was to uh, understand what drivers were for three separate audiences. And we began that with a qualitative set of qualitative groups. The purpose of those groups would be to isolate the behavioral drivers of donating and then use those drivers in a quantitative study to actually assess the degree of sentiment attached to each. We have a couple of techniques, one of them certified by MASB, that we think gets at the valid estimation of sentiment for those drivers. We might also say that the context here is much similar to what Robert Pasakoff mentioned. We do use the concept of a prior. In our terminology, a prior would be similar to what Bob discussed as an expectation. And the complexity of the problem is that the individual drivers are quite variable, quite elastic in terms of their utility or their value based on the prior that the individual brings to the purchase situation or the decision to donate in this. So this is a little bit of a roadmap as to how we got there. There's one online group discussion with folks that are heavy, medium, and light donors. We want to thank Fieldwork Atlanta and the Recollective for doing a wonderful job in not only balancing those participants, but also providing a very accurate and usable video interaction service for us to interview. There were about 15, there were exactly 15 questions. They were the same questions asked in each session. We had a very skilled moderator that not only asked each question in the same order for each group, but also very quickly and effectively got to the causal answer to each of those questions for each of the participants. And I sat in the background in the back room, making sure that the thing was asked in an orderly fashion and we didn't miss anything. We got very nice verbatim transcriptions from each of those sessions for each respondent and, of course, the moderator. We entered those verbatims to ChatGPT. You'll see the footnote there. It's the plus version 5.2 with the prompt only use the uploaded materials. So we're actually uploading transcripts from each of the 3 sessions. This is the format of the transcript. We added this because it is a key part of what we expected ChatGPT to do. The moderator questions are identical in each session. Topics are identical, asked in the same order. Each respondent is different, assigned a consistent name. Each segment session is a transcript in Word, and only those files are the source of the analysis. And I've just generated a little scheme here to show you what actually happened in each of the 3 files that were uploaded. And you can see it's just the moderator asks the first question, everybody answers that question, there's a discussion, and then the moderator moves to the second question. And all of that is structured much like you would structure an analysis of variance were the analysis to be numerical. So here's what happened. The first attempt at this, we used 3 transcript files, one for each of the 3 segments. And our prompt was always, quote, summarize differences between each of the 3 groups for each question. The first time we tried this, there was insufficient summarization in option 1. Way too much detail. We needed to get to something that was consistent across the 3 groups, not necessarily consistent by question, but certainly consistent in terms of what those terms meant, how the system was in fact summarizing the data. So we tried number 2, 3 transcript files, one for each question across the 3 segments. So again, the prompt is the same. Our problem here in terms of the output was there was little cross-question differentiation. We expected some differentiation, but we didn't have much. It kind of smooshed everything together in kind of a format that might have been used for a term paper, not the identification of unique drivers for each of those groups, and in some cases for each question. So number 3, we got more complicated as an input. We have 45 files, right? One for each segment question combination. Again, ask the same prompt. Now we're getting too much detail, right? We're gilding the lily, so to speak. And finally, we had an option that seemed to work. And that was enter the number 1 result output as input. And we asked the same question again. And what we got was what we interpreted as an analog of what a good analyst would do. There was clarity of between group differences, but there was enough similarity to understand how those groups differed. We'll talk about what we found. Obviously, we have masked the actual data here, but you can see we've got these drivers, 7 of them here, and they line up quite clearly with each of the 3 donation groups. You can see there is some repetition, but as we expected, the power of those drivers are really determined by the mindset or the prior of each of those groups having to do with this particular category. In fact, if you look at the light donor segment, they're using a quite unique driver only specific to that group. So this is the kind of result that we went back and looked, and it looked like that was exactly what the groups were telling us. And we have, in fact, the raw material now to generate a sentiment model, which includes each of those three groups. So the recipe: data collection, skilled moderation, backroom support. I'm not sure how much that impacted it, but we're mentioning it. consistently delivered topic questions, exhaustive responses, and an exact transcription. And what about the topic selection? Well, we had to generate the topics, which really were different types of behaviors, in such a way that there ought to have been some linkage between the drivers. So we set that up in advance. And finally, in the analysis, we wound up having to pre-process the data and then asking the same question on that pre-processed data. And that's what gave us the clarity of between group differences, which is exactly what we expected and needed. What are our conclusions here? Well, the output is dependent on the input. I don't remember who it was, but I think maybe it was Bob again who said exactly that. How the data are structured had a lot to do with the conclusions that we got from the raw output. Some output more closely resembles that of a skilled analyst. We're looking at a tool which appears to want to give long but accurate explanations. And what we're looking for here are snippets which are accurate but are summarized in such a way that differences between groups are clear. And secondly, or thirdly, don't assume that one AI approach is as good as another, because again, it is dependent on what input the algorithm works on. Our next steps, of course, are to validate the qual results with a real quantitative project which models the relative sentiment. And then we are experimenting with a qual-only methodology. And we've structured a couple of experiments to do that. This would greatly speed up the process. We're going to have to test it for validity, but that's part of the project. And then, if we can accomplish this, here's the payoff: easier, cheaper, and faster identification of behavior drivers would speed the development of what we've already been asked to get involved with, and that is the generation of an avatar that would reproduce the responses of an entire segment. The real crux of making this doable, of actually affecting this, is to make sure that the underlying model is accurate. And so that's what we're currently working on, as well as the quantitative execution of the project. So,
All right, well, fantastic. Let's open it up for questions, and while they come in, I have one. I have a comment, and we previously had discussed this, and the first thing that came to my mind is that we as marketers have been and market researchers have been very focused on getting quality data into the AI. So, we're trying to avoid garbage in, garbage out. But what you're showing here is an entirely another level of this, which is not that the data itself is wrong, but that the structure interacts with the model, the how the model goes about processing data. So it's no longer just a matter of garbage in, it's a matter of having not just good quality data going in, but it's having it in a right form. We just cannot assume that the AI is going to respond based on any form. Form matters.
yeah, Frank, that's exactly it. We tried to think of the algorithm, of the AI tool, as an analyst, and we structured the input data in such a way that would make it easier for the analyst to give us what we would have expected had a human done it. And so that was really our strategy from the get-go. Now, our next step: can we actually estimate the relative magnitude of sentiment attached to each of these things? is a daunting task, mainly because it's all dependent upon the prior. In in Bob's terminology, all dependent upon the expectation. So those drivers have to be positioned and explained uh, in such a way that they also include what is the expectation and what are we dealing with in terms of the value of the expectation. Because as you know from the prior work that we've talked about, it's not just the prior, it's really how that prior is interpreted by whatever group we're looking at. So there is an interaction between the prior and the actual driver itself.
I think your presentation was exceptionally clear.
Okay, well that's good. We hope the recipe is helpful, and we certainly hope that others can validate what it is that we found.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Tim, for participating. This is fabulous work.
Thanks, thanks,
All
Frank.
right.